I'll also let you know that in the 10 slot, for those of you that have been here since the beginning bell, we're gonna try to go light and breezy with some hopefully funny pictures. We got dogs, cats, bunnies, and a throwback to most of our childhood as well, because this is not necessarily the impact zone for presenting at 3:30 before the big finale, but it is good to see a bunch of people. I think that it's like, I always feel so good when I get to these places and I see people I haven't seen in a long time, and I see just kind of the energy and the juice from people interacting with people in person versus over Zoom and Slack, which I think most of us prefer, at least in this industry. But I will turn it over to you, Melinda.
Thank you. Yes, and hopefully we can entertain you this afternoon a little bit. We are talking about digital advertising, though, and historically, when you think about performance and effectiveness and good digital advertising, it's all about being data driven, right? And it's really always been about user data and getting the most user data, the best user data, understanding who you're reaching. Of course, we're at a moment, really in the middle of kind of a long moment where those user data signals are becoming less and less available for a variety of reasons. We all know it's coming. And so I think understandably the kind of immediate reaction that most of the industry has taken has really been this one. Like, where's the data? I need the data. I'm supposed to be data driven, right? Like, I need it. Let me get at that user data. And that makes sense that this user data has always performed, right? You think about like what the kind of the cookieless solutions that are out there today, whether it's new identity solutions or from Google topics and blocks and or other probabilistic IDs. All of these things kind of have to do with user data. How much do you know about the user? How granular is it? How aggregated is it? Have they, like, when did they consent? When can I use that data? But it's all about how much user data do I get as an advertiser. And so there's this framing where advertiser effectiveness and user privacy, consumer privacy are kind of like fundamentally at odds when you think of it that way, right? There's these two opposing forces, and they're mediated by how much user data flows. And maybe you get a little more privacy with a little more granular data in exchange for a little less performance, but it's like these two things always trade off. And that framing is not helpful. Because first of all, if these two things are just the way you're thinking of the problem, they're always going to trade off, then there's no way for both to win, right? There's no way to have both advertiser effectiveness and user privacy at the same time. And then almost even worse than that, if you're just so focused on just getting that sweet user data, then you can't, you're not going to be able to look around and look for other things, other ways of solving the problem without knowing exactly who it is that you're showing the ad to in that moment. I think this will, okay, so here's another way to think of it that I'm sure many of you have seen. So addressability, like if you think about all the inventory out there, what's the kind of range of addressability? So we have this pyramid on the very, very top. There's like, I think I have a button. Oh, I'm telling you not to think like this. Oh, okay. Think beyond. On the very, very top, there's like maybe a small set of people that are fine to share that data. They haven't opted out, or they've opted into a new solution, and you have information about them. But then of course there's this bottom of the pyramid where you don't know anything about the user. So you can call this non-addressable, you can call it unauthenticated, unknown audiences. There's a lot of ways to think about this. But the important part of this framing is to really accept that you don't know anything about this person. You're not going to try and figure it out some other way. This is inventory where the person on the other side of the screen hasn't shared their information with you, maybe because they don't want to, right? So without trying to figure out who they are, how can I figure out whether or not I want to show my ad in this moment? So what do you know in that moment? You know about the inventory, right? You know about that moment itself, that moment in the inventory where you have the opportunity to show an impression. And so the reframing is, how do I stop focusing on that user data and then start focusing on that moment and how to make the best predictions about that moment? So there's opportunities here, right? There's opportunities for innovation. And I think that like this change towards decreasing user signals has been in motion for a long time, right? It's been in motion since before January 14th, 2020, a date that's seared in my memory. I don't know about all of you. But when Google made their announcement that they're going to start deprecating cookies. But I think it's hard to deny that at the time when Google made that announcement, one big change that had was it kicked off this whole wave of innovation. Some of that innovation was already happening. Some of it maybe hasn't started happening yet, but that moment in time poured fuel on a fire and generated a lot more innovation. So the opportunity there is that because of that, there's this whole set of products out there, new innovative products that are available now, whenever this transition happens, whether or not you're thinking about post-cookie or post-ID or data deprecation or whatever it is, there's a whole set of new technologies that have been kicked off because Google sort of kicked us all into this new wave of innovation. Jay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, you may.
This is scripted. But is Google deprecating cookies the thing, or is it a thing that happened because of another thing?
Yes, okay. It's clearly a thing that happened because of another thing, right? Like Google didn't invent the idea that privacy was going to become more important. There's a number of forces here. There's Chrome and cookies. There's privacy and regulation, and there's just consumer sentiment. And in any case, whenever these things happen, like the train has left the station. This change is coming. One thing I will say is this is not really important, but it's just a peeve of mine, so I have to say it. When Google, for the second time this summer, announced that they were pushing back the deadline, a lot of people said, "What does this mean? What should we do?" And the main thing I heard was, "This changes nothing. Like everyone do exactly what you did before. This changes nothing." And it's like, okay, but it changes something, right? Like it is a change. We have like 6 to 9 more months, like whether or not that's you maybe we're behind schedule and actually need to not change what you were doing. We do have more time. So the choice now is, what are you going to do with that time? And you have a choice. These changes are still in motion, whether or not Chrome is the one that really kicks you into implementing them. But the legislation is still coming. And importantly, a lot of your consumers are paying attention to this in a way that they weren't before, right? So you think about, a lot of people don't want to be tracked on the internet. And including many of every brand's future customers don't want to be tracked on the internet. So now brands have this opportunity and they have more time to change, like to think about when they want to make these changes without having been kicked into it specifically by Google, but because they're on their own schedule. The other thing is there's all these new solutions out there, right? Like, meanwhile, just practically speaking, in terms of what does it mean that the deadline's extended, like you've got Q4 to deal with, right? And you've got 2023 to plan. But the good news and kind of the opportunity here is there's all these new solutions that have been kicked off by this wave of innovation, and you can choose to, if they work for you now, implement them now and get the benefits now for Q4 or 2023, whatever happens.
I love it. Great answer.
Yes. Okay, so speaking of innovation and the internet, here are some cats. So okay, what is this about? This is about AI. So AI has gone through this explosion in the last 10 years where all these new developments have happened that has allowed AI to do a lot more with a lot less data. Okay, so we have some cats. Okay, so in 2012, there was this exciting to machine learning nerds. Google built this algorithm that was like, it was basically like a video image detector. So they built this thing, they ran a whole bunch of, I think, YouTube videos through it, and it found cats. So that makes sense. But the cool thing was they didn't tell it what a cat was. So they didn't provide it any labeled images of cats or any information that said what a cat was. It didn't actually learn how to detect cats. It found there's this thing. This is something. I don't know what it is, but it's something. There's a lot of somethings that are really related to each other. They look like this, and there's a lot of videos about them on the internet. And so, like, this is a big deal. It learned all of this without, like, I'm not going to say on its own, but without a lot of curation. Just like from whatever data was available, it was able to learn there's this thing, and it seems like it's all related. And now it doesn't take that much data to go say, hey, that's a cat. And now you have a cat detector, right? We're here to talk about advertising. What does that have to do with advertising? So we're in a very similar situation, right? Like we have less and less user data that's available as time goes by. We still want to be able to make predictions, and we have this AI. So this is 2012. This was like very new at the beginning of being developed. Now it's like a fully mature thing. It's ready to be applied to all new applications, and it's a way that lets AI do more with less data. So in particular, to think about our use case, you can take, say, just like streams of digital journey data, panel data where people have opted in. You can just see flows of stuff happening. You don't know like what any particular brand's goals are or anything like that, but you can just start to understand behavior. That's just like understanding kind of what a cat is without labeling it. And then you can bring in a little bit of extra information and make that super fine-tuned cat detector, which is actually something to target ads on the internet based on information and impressions. I think I got a little ahead of myself because that's my next picture. But the point is, the internet is just like cats, digital advertising. Okay, to make it a little more concrete. So we're back to this pyramid. You have some, and so now we're talking about, we actually did this. The thing I'm talking about, using less data, doing more with less data. This is what we do at Dstillery. Hi, I'm from Dstillery. We do targeted advertising without IDs. So you can take this small amount of data that you might have, first-party data, high-fidelity information that contains kind of like the signal you want to capture. You combine that with this understanding of every single moment. We call it the map of the internet. It's the same concept as the thing that Google found to make cats, but like with whatever data is available, the AI today can learn all of this understanding of what does that moment mean. You combine it with a little bit of high-resolution data. And now you have something that understands how to decision at scale on individual impressions, like on just the inventory moments, without knowing or even trying to know anything about the actual person on the other side of the screen.
Can I show my cat picture now?
Yeah, you can show your cat. Yeah.
Which one do I hit?
The green play-looking button.
This one?
Above that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I also have a picture of a cat. It's the Cat in the Hat. This is, Melinda used this term peeve before, and my peeve, and this has just been a peeve since I'm older than I look. I've been around since like the Earth's crust was cooling, probably before cookies, in advertising. And I think one thing that we oftentimes force on brands and agencies is this choice. You have to do this thing, and that thing is mutually exclusive from this other thing. And I think it's getting a lot more complex now. And I wasn't able to attend some of the earlier sessions, but what I heard from those sessions was like, everybody's like, we're really busy and the economy is really choppy and we need to sell things. So if this is getting pushed back, if Google deprecating cookies is getting pushed back, are these things, are they first order priorities, or are they just things that I have to kind of, play at and have a couple of sound bites when management asks me, hey, what are we doing about privacy? What are we doing about regulation? What are we doing about addressable versus not addressable? And our opinion and our experience is that these things don't need to be mutually exclusive. That doesn't mean that do more with one partner that can, satisfy more of these things. But, the idea of interoperability, the idea of cooperation, the idea of 1 + 1 = 3, I do in fact believe that. And we've seen experience to support that. You don't have to just say, well, I need to check the privacy box today. That's going to be at the expense of performance. Regulation is a thing. I'm going to, like the ostrich, stick my head in the sand. That's not something that should drive innovation. I actually think that these things, we've imposed upon the industry a lot of complexity and a lot of choices, but I do in fact believe that these things can work cooperatively, and they can actually help brands and marketers and agencies today to manage into the future, to get over the bridge of the change that we're in the midst of, and to help themselves in a pretty choppy, uncertain economic time right now as well. Because programmatic advertising will be a thing that tends to be a bit more resilient in turbulent times, because that's what people need to do. They need to reach the customers that are either their current customers that they need to try to stay relevant to in tough times, or they need to go out and find new customers by way of good and efficient customer acquisition. So programmatic does tend to be a little bit more resilient during turbulent times. And I don't think that innovation should be shelved or deprioritized, or customer privacy or customer centricity should take a back shelf in tough times. If anything, I think it's a time when brands and marketers can innovate and really show that even in tough times, the changes and the things that they do can make a big difference. So all that to say is I wanted my own cat slide. I found this. I love the cat in the hat. And this isn't what life should feel like. I think that people should be able to, do what they need to do to prepare for the future, but also do things that are going to drive results today, with customers at the core, not just with results and KPIs as the drivers. So I don't want to click. I'm afraid to go to the next one because you said I couldn't go back. I am famously unprepared for speaking engagements because I think sometimes it takes some of the what's the term? I think it takes a little bit of the authenticity out of it. But this is obviously a slide that's meant to show that ID based and ID free can in fact work in a unified way to drive incremental reach and scale and performance and all of that. But it was brought home, and I was telling Melinda before I came in here, I have a 13-year-old daughter, her name's Callie, and she was blowing up my cell phone asking me to go get her insomnia cookies. And I was like, man, if this isn't like the perfect text, if this isn't as apropos as possible for this environment, it's like we're talking about cookies, we're talking about the deprecation of cookies. And she's like, well, I kind of want the macadamia nut one, but maybe a snickerdoodle. And I'm like, listen, sweetie, I'll just get you both. And I was like, as soon as I saw the slide, I was like, oh my God, this is like the insomnia cookie slide, right? There is a way to, have your cookies and eat it too. And I think that what we have found, and this wasn't necessarily our objective, was that in building a solution that is based on the power of our heritage as a predictive behavioral targeting partner, largely driven by cookies and identifiers up until this point, we were really building the alternative solution. We really thought that we need to build this thing because the future is going to catch up to us really, really, really quickly. And we have to figure out how to kind of transition all of this ID-based addressable targeting to ID-free, compliant, privacy-centric targeting. And we're lucky because we have a big portfolio of clients, and we have a lot of clients who do want to be consulted with, be talked to, and be led into the future. And we said, let's just start testing and learning. And one of the things that we found very early was that even in environments where identifiers are available for measurement, in those environments where we can actually target people with an ID-free solution, there's incremental reach and consistent performance. And it helped us understand that we can now start to answer one of the complaints or the questions that we oftentimes get from our brands and agency partners is, the hardest thing for me to do is actually to add scale, generate incremental reach without degrading performance. And so what my insomnia cookie slide is meant to convey here is that, back to Melinda's ostrich slide, I think that we are in kind of a really interesting era of innovation. And I would hate to see brands and agencies and marketers think that the innovation that has been and is growing is like a break the glass moment thing. Is that when they finally get shut off, that's when I'm really going to kind of put these things into production and really see the effect that they can have. A peeve of mine as well is we have all sorts of brands testing this thing. About 80% of them are seeing that the ID-free solution provides reach and performance, but they're still just putting kind of test budgets against it. And I'm like, why wouldn't you go find more people who are meaningful to your brand in tough times to add reach and maintain consistent performance? So I think we have to get out of this testing mindset, and we have to get into a mindset of hey, what's best for consumers? What meets my business needs? Let's rock and roll, particularly in Q4. So I'm going to call this the insomnia cookie slide from here on out when I give talks like these. So this is my bunny slide. I was so happy when I found these bunnies. I'll leave the bubbles for you to read. And I don't want to be some celebrity evangelist or panelist that's just saying listen, it's all going to be okay over the long run. This is amazing. We're building towards this future state. I actually do believe that we're in a time where we can, there can be interoperability. There can be harmony between authenticated, non-authenticated users and targeting, and where there is an opportunity today to really add kind of innovation at scale to do the thing that programmatic targeting is meant to do, which is just better understand your customers, strengthen your relationship with those customers, and as importantly, if not more importantly, go out and find new ones. because it will be one of the things that continues to get is, a lot of investment and is fairly resilient in tough times. And it's a great opportunity to test and learn. And I would just hate to see brands, marketers, and agencies kind of shelve the innovation and the progress that we've made against, the regulatory announcements, the Google announcements, at a time when I really think like programmatic can kind of really hold its head up and say, hey, we can really be the thing to help strengthen the business and strengthen our relationship with our buyers and prospects, even in the most challenging times. I don't think it's a load of, you can read the fourth word from the fifth. I don't think it's a load of it. I really do believe it. There's been a lot of innovation. I think AI is largely driving it, and there's a ton of good stuff that can be done with it. So we didn't want to kind of pitch and try to sell you anything here, although that's kind of like, what a lot of companies do. So with that, we're going to end on the bunny slide. We're going to end on a message of unity, harmony, and reality, and not a dream state. And I hope you found it mildly entertaining. And maybe a little bit useful as I think you're moving into the final stretch of your sessions. That's it. I'm Jay. I'm from Dstillery. This is Melinda, and that's it.